that bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in drugs and human beings.
Yes. We're good to go. We are live, everyone. We are back. This is the after show. We are following the presidential debate. And Dr. Lisa, I know you had comments before we ended the live show.
Instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the board.
First, let me respond to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's busing them in and paying them to be there.
Did he not see the Democratic convention?
Nobody is busting nobody in, and nobody is paying.
Busting them in and paying them.
Not a fact check. Nobody's paying anybody to go to any rally.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they said invitations. People are going on their own.
Absolutely.
Nobody paid me to go to any rally.
What's going on here? You're going to end up in World War III. Just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk about this already. Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating
the cats
of the people.
The dogs and the cats.
There. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again.
I said that.
Phrase, make America
they
great
go
again.
because they like that crazy conversation.
Country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here.
Wow.
How derogatory was that?
And derogatory was that comment. We're going to be Venezuela on steroids. Did y'all hear that?
Oh my God.
Community all this.
People on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people on television saying my dog was eaten by the people
that
live there.
The disrespect has started.
Yeah.
So let me respond to the rest.
Knew it was coming.
Talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if you didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so consciously. They did bad things or bad jobs.
You fired people that didn't get along with him.
Right. And didn't agree. And
And
didn't
didn't
agree.
agree with him. That's who you fired.
That's right.
Who's were just
Had to
killed,
pause and
viciously
catch
and
himself.
violently killed, and I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they? But they
What
have
does that
done
matter?
such a poor job.
That's him being narcissistic
Fire
again.
anybody. Look at the
I gave you
look at the
Right.
material to write a book.
Right, exactly.
They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president
Fact check.
in history by far.
Right. And I don't even think that was the question. But okay.
Deportation
It wasn't.
proposal.
I don't know how we got to know how great you were.
President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you have no problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Well, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They
There's
allowed
not millions
terrorists.
of
They
criminals.
allowed
Fact check.
common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers to come into our country, and then now in the United
Drug
States,
dealers been
they're
here.
told by their countries like
We have enough of this.
never come back, or we're going to
They
kill
didn't
you.
just
You
come
know
here.
that crime in
No.
Right.
crime in countries
They
all over the
didn't
world
let them in.
is way down.
Corporate America asked them to come in. Stop it. Let's not talk about the drug trade war, okay? Let's not really talk about who has let drugs come into this country
Hello. And all the other trafficking.
and what
that goes on.
communities they put them in.
Right.
Right. And all the other
And
trafficking.
what
that goes
communities
on.
exactly that destroyed because of the open door that drug dealers had under their policy.
Let's talk about who's at the helm of it all, right? Let's talk about who's at the helm of it.
Except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country.
Crime is not up through the roof.
It
Crime
sure
has
is.
decreased.
It's called
It
migrant
sure,
crime.
or
And it's
overall within the
happening at
last year,
levels
it's down
that nobody thought
22%. Huh? I don't even know statistics, but I've been watching the news. They say it every day.
Fraudulent statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I
Right.
think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
All right
And
now.
let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them
He
against
said
their
that
political
so
opponent. And I'm winning most of them,
sympathetically.
and I will
Thank
win the
you.
rest of the appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases. It's called
you convicted.
Right.
Should he forget he's a convicted felon?
Right. I'm winning most of them.
Those cases
Oh, you lost.
with the DOJ from Atlanta and
how many counts was that?
To the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. Now, what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out.
It was not a victory.
And they
You are convicted.
to this country.
What is he talking about?
To try and win an
34
election.
Of your peers, by your peers.
34
A jury. A jury.
Right.
Of your peers.
Well, let's talk about extreme
said they
and
used
understand the context in which
to
this
go after.
election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand that this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Okay.
to stop him.
Right.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
See?
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that
Oh,
You have a
no.
bullet to the head.
No.
That was a bullet to the head.
democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Right.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I do, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands that strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump,
Well, first of all, I wasn't
She
given
went back to basics there. She talked about values. I'm so glad she did that.
My father, I learned a
Back
lot.
to the basics here.
A fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions.
So now he has to talk about how he was raised.
Surprised. So we have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out, she went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money.
Needed a minute to gather his thoughts.
She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take...
Oh, but I'm a big fan of solar.
500 acres.
Those people are looking,
but they take too much space.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election.
What is he saying?
nothing.
I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a
He's
cornerstone.
saying that
And the role
he's
of
not for solar, but he's for solar because you know people have intermittent energy these days. So I'm not for it, but I'm for it.
The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day. The officers coming under attack.
Ask him about the peaceful transfer of power.
Unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home.
Ignorance at its best. Absolutely, Kathy.
About what you did on that day.
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David.
And he wants them prosecuted.
And crime.
How about his in-laws? They should be prosecuted.
Right.
In-laws that came from another country,
Right.
should they be prosecuted too?
Right.
That you rush to get green cards for.
The city of Seattle.
Yep.
When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I
nothing to do with
It's got nothing
I went
to do
to
with that.
Nancy Pelosi, the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their job.
Nancy Pelosi was responsible for storming the Capitol.
She didn't do her
He's
job.
been saying that from the beginning, though. He's been trying to blame her for that from the
She
beginning.
said I offered her.
That he told Pence that Pence better not do
Right.
that. He forgets that piece.
Mhm.
I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob
All right.
to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason.
Right.
But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
Yes, he
But
did.
for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
That's right.
Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just step up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy.
It's a different term. I feel differently now.
Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like
What was debunked?
25 up.
The Charlottesville tiki torch riots.
Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both lead this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill.
So condescending.
All he has to do is
Wake him up at 4 o'clock in the
Wake
afternoon.
them up and go sign and go close the borders.
those people are killing many people.
And why does he always go back to that? And like to him, everything about this country that's an issue is because of the immigrants.
It's the immigrants.
Times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that
He said, I said that?
No, I don't acknowledge everybody. Sarcastically, you know that. And we said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. Let's look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval.
It was proof that he won?
million votes. The most
No,
votes any
he
sitting
said that he
president
didn't.
has ever
He
gotten.
changed
I
his
was
tune
told
and
I
said
got
we
63,
lost by a
which is what I got
whisker.
in 2016.
And he said I said that sarcastically.
He was being sarcastic. Yeah.
People should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in.
Our elections are bad.
Speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
Watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm. Lost by which we didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge looked at it.
and said
They said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how
doesn't have standing to overturn the votes of people. Let's get this one straight. He doesn't have the right to overturn my vote. That's what he doesn't have a right to do. That's what he tried to do.
We have so many facts.
And if he gets elected, he said he will cut out voting, and he would have his people vote because they put them in office for them to vote, not for the people to vote.
That's right.
That's what he said he would do.
We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you.
This nation ain't dying. This nation is well alive.
Believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
He's threatening.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
That's right.
I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused.
Mm-hmm.
That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when
we had no problems.
That man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago.
We were great.
Nothing.
He got no votes. He got 14 million votes.
Mar-a-Lago.
Talk about a threat.
He may have been feared.
14 million votes, and they
What he would do.
What he would do.
What he next.
That's why a lot of people in his court said, I can't work for this man. And many people that work for him said he cannot be the president.
He was the first one to
He's
leave.
not stable.
Failed, and now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time
I
is up.
think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris in December
Yeah,
you
they
said,
cut the
quote, Israel
commercials
has a
out.
right to
I didn't
defend itself,
realize
but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers.
I'm glad she said that.
This
Because
war
it's on both sides. It's not just one side.
It's not just one side. It's both sides are doing it.
Both sides have the right to defend themselves.
That's right.
This has been a long
So we will continue to work around the clock.
long-standing issue.
Work
Very
around
long.
the clock,
Yeah.
also understanding that we must
Biblically long.
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Exactly.
in that
Let's
solution.
not mistake this.
Security for the Israeli people in Israel and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years.
Oh, stop it.
And killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party.
No,
she
he
hates
didn't.
Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist.
Once again.
That was a prejudice statement right there, too.
Very prejudiced.
Yeah. At the same time, in her own way,
demeaning. Let's go to a party.
Because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
Before becoming president.
Absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to again divide and distract.
He wanted to go to the sorority parties,
which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia.
I muted it. It's taking a break.
This is ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, just to hear him saying over and over again, he talked about, and I don't know if Nick is still with us, but talk about the fact checking. 15% of our domestic products come from our imported. So to take 15% and raise tariffs on 15% of what we consume in this country would be horrific, especially the 15% of the stuff that we actually get, which is directly goes to the American people. Yeah. So to say that, he also talked about crime is way up. I went online and looked at multiple websites. All of them talked about the decrease in murder, the decrease in robbery, the decrease in assault, the decrease in rape, the decrease in property. None of them speak to these horrific crimes that are being caused by immigrants coming to this country. None of them talk about that. Yeah. None of them say as if they're coming to this country to commit crimes.
Right. That's right.
That's also what he's saying is that immigrants are coming to this country, people that are leaving war-torn countries like Ukraine, like Israel, like all of these places that are being torn apart and coming here for safety and refuge.
Yeah.
They don't even want to. They want to be in their country.
Yeah. Yeah.
But can't be in their country because people are being killed.
They're not making money. They can't live.
They can't live.
Their lives are in danger.
Destroyed.
I was going to say they don't even have anywhere to go.
They have no
no hospitals, no schools. These are people at their very end of
decimated,
desperate for just to have a bed to sleep in.
Exactly.
These people aren't coming here to commit crimes. It's a disgrace. What he said, we're going to become the next Venezuela. That was it. That was such a derogatory and inappropriate comment to have made.
Yeah.
Venezuela or Venezuelan people, as if that is, as if this is what this country is going to be. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To talk about a people. And
just
then
prejudice,
if they come here, that's what we're going to be called. We're people of multiple. We can't even name the amount of nationalities that are living here right now in the United States of America.
That's right.
And for him to speak so poorly of immigrants, my parents were immigrants to this country. I'm first generation American. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you? Your former wife was a first generation American. Let's get that straight. The people you
want
marry.
the freedoms. We
Yeah.
Both his wives.
Both of his wives are from other countries.
From other immigrants to this country. How dare you speak about immigrants so poorly?
Yeah.
You're speaking about your own children's parent or mother.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And then talk about how they're coming here to take the black jobs away. He had the audacity to say it again.
Twice. Yeah.
He want us
That's
to get
not the
all
black
wild.
job.
Black and Hispanic.
Because we should be concerned because the immigrants
We should be
are taking
concerned
your
because
job.
those jobs. What jobs? I would love to know what jobs he's still talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner, certified businesswoman.
Mm-hmm.
What job is he talking about?
That's right.
One?
Oh my gosh! I mean, and keeps on going back to this border issue, and go down and come out. Let's leave right now because this is a waste of his time. And go see you get him out of the bed.
Listen, for the people that follow him, he's pulling on the heartstrings of the people that follow him, which is why he keeps going back to immigration because of the prejudices of those who follow him, right? Yes. So that's why he keeps going back to that. Right. This is why this is such
because he harps on that. He's making immigrants look like the bad guy so that the people that see them, the one person or, oh, this is what the immigrants are doing, eating up the cats and the dogs. Did you hear that one? Yeah. I like what you said. The first one, let me talk what you said, Nick, about the 81, there you go. Vice President Harris, Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
That's right.
Clearly, he is having a very difficult time processing that.
That's right.
81 million decided not to elect you as president.
That's right.
That's the fact.
That's right.
That's the fact. And he is. You listen to how he's still talking about. He is everybody wants him back. No, they don't want you back. And he would never have had the war in Russia. I mean, now that's really. You would have made sure it never happened. Based on what? The way he was talking to Putin? And chumming up to him? I mean, the things he's saying, he's not even talking about. I think the issue here, he's not talking about anything that he's going to do when he becomes, if he was to be. I can't even let it come out of my mouth. He's not talking about any issues he's going to deal with. He's just talking about how, in his mind, how bad everything went.
Right. Didn't go my way.
The economy that he caused, that he's talking about, that quote unquote went into inflation, was caused by a lot of the stuff he did. If you follow The Economist, a lot of stuff he did while he was president and nothing was done.
Yeah. And if you look at now I will go back to this because I had just looked this up, the inflation rates. It was lower because he was coming out from the Obama administration, where the inflation rates were low. So his average is lower than Biden, but that's because he inherited
Obama's. That's right.
Right.
That's right. Right. That's right. And people, unfortunately, if you don't understand economy and economics, you don't understand what what he did was because of all of the things that stopped, because he poorly handled the pandemic. That's when prices started going up because of all the things that stopped happening, the production, the workforce, all of that stuff almost was decimated. And that's why the cost of so many things went up.
And what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify the question. Do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win the war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done. Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to define one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you. Afghanistan came up on the last
Ring the bell on that one.
I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet please, he would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fella. And that is another one. When I went to meet President Zelensky, I met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Where I said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up.
Who told him it was one of the most incredible jobs?
Who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them.
She had to get herself. She got herself.
Because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He's the head of the Taliban.
Abdul, we're on a first name basis with the Taliban?
And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. Get that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed.
He's
we did have an agreement. Negotiated
so disrespectful.
It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left.
I told Abdul.
$85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment. Just to finish.
The first time. And then he said, Abdul.
The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
Her boss.
I want to move on now to race.
Biden is her boss?
Mr. President, you recently said a vice
That's
president.
he said that before.
I didn't know she was
He's been
black
saying it
until
all
a
night.
number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
That's right.
I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal.
He said, I don't believe it's important, but he keeps doing it.
Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
Whatever she wants to be.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
I read that she was not black and she put out.
I think it's,
No, well, he was saying that she said she wasn't black. That's why he was trying to say.
Okay,
but
the second part was that she put out.
No, he was saying that she put out, meaning she put out there that she wasn't black.
Because he cut it off like
He
she's a
can't
whore.
articulate properly. No, that's not what he was saying. But he can't articulate properly.
This kind of approach that is just
But
constant.
how would she say that when she's an HBCU graduate,
Right.
aka soror? Like, how would she say she wasn't black?
He owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
Yes, he did.
Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States.
Yep.
And I think the American people want better than that.
That's
Want
right.
better than this. Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
Yeah.
Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
That's
Vice
right.
President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most
You don't,
divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, well, a lot of people
Come up with things like she just said. I don't remember it, but like she said.
They admitted. They said they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. This is a
He
person.
said they pled guilty.
that
Then they
has to
said,
stretch back
we pled,
years,
we're not
40,
guilty.
50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the
Nobody's
greatest
saying.
economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger.
Because now the
But
country
they're
is need to be
destroying our
rebuilt
economy.
again.
They have no idea what a good economy is.
Oh,
Their
they're gonna
oil
rebuild that.
policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the
She
gentleman.
is Biden.
She is Biden.
The worst inflation we've ever
The
had.
worst
A
inflation.
horrible economy
Yeah,
because
she's Biden.
inflation has made it so bad that she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Time's up.
He said, thank you, stop talking.
Briefly.
Whatever you're saying, you just stop.
And I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
That's right.
Yes.
One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always
available.
disparaging the American people.
Yes.
I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice
and
President
move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump, we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She has
you
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay,
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to
President
respond.
Trump,
No, the
President
former
Trump,
president has
no,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry, we're
I
gonna
just need to
move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration.
I thought you fired them all. They were no good.
Yeah.
So do they. They have really
Got rid of them.
differences. They don't get rid of them. But let me just
You
explain.
just said
He
he
just
fired
said
them
he
all.
did.
You just say fired them all.
Make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
Of a plan.
we
Right.
come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes?
That's right. That's right.
as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it. That's in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
You made a
of.
mistake. And number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or is being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable, but we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because they will kill.
Respectful enough to, they keep saying these people for the current presidency. They're not even respectful enough to identify.
No, he's not respectful at all.
No.
They have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it between him and his son. They get all
something about him in China.
They get all this money.
That's all he always says.
Countries, and then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China?
And now you're trying to bring the son involved in this. Oh my God.
Trying to bring what? Say that again.
His son involved in this.
Whose son? Biden?
Biden's son.
Oh yeah, he's been doing that too, and that's not relevant.
He loves that. He loves this rhetoric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our
closing statements coming up.
This ABC's presidential debate.
So just to summarize, you guys talk about what you feel about what's been discussed thus far throughout this whole debate. Your summary.
I expected this. I mean, I gotta be
treat
honest.
you like the debate. Sorry, you get 1 minute.
He actually addressed some of the topics this time without, well, he did do what he normally does, which is go back to something old, antagonize, name call, all the things that take you away from the actual topics. He did address some of the topics, but he spent most of his time just, and I guess that's what the debate is about, defending what he did and promoting what he's going to do, which they're both doing. But he spends so much time being derogatory and negative and just not focusing on what he's actually going to do to make this country better, because he made it so good before we messed it up. I think that's the only thing I keep hearing every time I hear him. Oh, but they messed it up. I did this, but they messed it up. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you didn't give me the opportunity to do my best. So give me another shot. That's what I'm hearing.
Like I said, the bad boyfriend that won't go away. Right. Mm-hmm. We went out 4 years and now it's over. And he didn't do a great job. Horrible. He didn't do it. What he clearly did accomplish was, and he holds his hat over this, is turning the Supreme Court around. Mm-hmm. He clearly did that, and with the people that bought him that election, mm-hmm. I say this because sometimes you find yourself in interesting places. Mm-hmm. So I know the behind the scene thing that went on in this one, mm-hmm. and the right wing evangelical groups that paid for him to become president to turn around Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. Right, that's what he did. Other than that, like I said, if you don't understand the economy, the way he left this country during the pandemic and never addressed the pandemic, he caused the tumbles that they had to deal with and then fix. Right. And because of the lack of jobs that jobs that went unrestored, mm-hmm. I'll say it like that, because of the production in fruits and vegetables and all those different things that we lost. Mm-hmm. Addressing the infrastructure of the country, where and let's talk about the environment, the fires that destroyed millions and millions of miles of land that we grew, farms that there was farming and vegetation, all the different things that really allows the environment to grow and produces all of the things. Yeah, we'll talk about the different things that happen. So I think all in all, he's not addressing anything. Yeah, it's typical saying, what he is. What I do give.
Wow, I have to stop you there because we want to make sure that we get they're back on when they come back on and do their summary. But I wanted to just kind of say what you just said, right? He's not really addressing any issues. He's pushing an agenda for immigration, 2 for China, right? And I think both of those are done because he's pulling on the heartstrings of his population, right? Of people that he know will vote for him. There's an issue in this country with products coming from China, especially from right-winged people, right? Who believe that we should make America great again. So this is why he's focused on these issues, so that he can appeal to his voters. So it's smart in his regard because he needs to get the votes from the people that he know he can get the votes from. But he's not addressing any real issues, and he's clearly not for the people of this country, right?
I think the first president's his first election, that was his ticket. I don't think it's his ticket this time. I think, to your point, he is going to stay with his loyalist.
He has to.
But he's lost. He's lost party.
Favor.
He lost the bigger party, right? he lost key people in his party that they're done with it. They're done, because one thing I give the Vice President Harris credit for, she kept on coming back to the plan. She kept on coming back to her plan. She cleared up the facts, and she said, "This is what I'll do. This is what I do." I don't think you heard one thing that he said he would do outside of I'm the best person, and they thought I was always the best president. And all he kept on talking about was what he wanted to do for himself.
Yeah, and she's quite clear and concise on her position. and where she stands and what she's pushing, right, for the American people, for all
the
people.
American people. She said that that'd be a good thing. How many times she talked about the American people?
The collective. Yes.
How many times, if you compared how many times he talked about how good what he talks about himself, and how many times she talked about the American people, I'm sure we'll see that disparity.
That's right. Now let's listen into their summary.
The hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans.
There we go.
And focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these
What are you
wonderful
going to
things.
do?
Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC
None of that
presidential debate from
what I'm
here
gonna
in
do.
Philadelphia. And that's the Constitution Center.
Not one closing remark about how I'm going to run this country.
Nope.
I mean, I know we need to go. One thing, I don't want nobody that sounds like him leading me at all.
Yeah.
Yep.
At all. There is nothing that he has said that gives me a glimmer of hope that our country could. And let me say this:
Could be better.
America is not destroyed. America is not in the garbage. We have not tanked. Everything is not terrible. And this whole concept of making America great again. America is a great country. The abilities and freedoms we still have, even though he tried to take it away, the fact that we can fight to get them back. The fact that we have a government that we could go and vote in less than a few weeks and make a change to what and go back to what we know is right and what we want to be. She talked about freedom. I want freedom back. She talked about opportunity economy. I want an opportunity. I have a small business and I'm looking to do better things with that business.
Mhm.
I don't need to be overtaxed.
Mhm.
I don't need to be overtaxed by what I get on Amazon, i.e., where it comes from. I don't really care where it comes from. It's an open economy. It's a world. See, what we have developed is a global economy, and I'm okay with a global economy.
Yeah.
That means we all benefit in a global economy because we have a global system.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. This is not him, and the fact that we and other countries can come together and create and maintain, and it was like almost a feeling of the Olympics.
Mhm.
Where together we can do it. That's what I want from this country.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Well, all right, everyone. You heard it here. We talked about the debate. You heard the debate for yourself in the background. We're looking for your comments also. Tell us what you think. But more importantly, make sure that you get out there and you vote based on what you heard tonight. Make sure that you get out there and vote, and you vote for what's best for your families and your households, your communities, and your country alike. So this is Fem Talk. We're glad that you joined us for the after show. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m. on Fem Talk. We love you all. Take care. We're going to end the stream. Hold on one second here.